Hello and welcome, listeners, to episode 23 of the Rediscover Human podcast. I'm Timothy with my friend Joshua.
Hey guys.
How do? And to the viewers on YouTube as well. It's been a while since we did an episode, probably one of the longest breaks we've kind of had. Because I kind of like to come in with a subject, don't we?
Yeah.
But there's not been any major subjects, but at the same time we get messages. I think people kind of just like hearing us talk about
Ramble,
whatever. Yeah, ramble about whatever we're kind of into at the moment. So we are back with another episode. We've got a few points to touch on today, with some things that we'll get into. We'll start real briefly because we kind of talk about politics, even though we're not deeply into politics, but just what we observe from outside viewers of the world today. Mm-hmm. And I guess since last time, it actually happened, didn't it? Biden is actually officially the president right now, which we weren't quite sure.
Yeah, it was going to happen.
It was going to happen.
It got sort of, I don't know. It was a bizarre how it came about because you had like troops in the Capitol and all that sort of thing, and all the Q speak was going right down to the line, as if there was going to be this big like movie style
swoop in.
Overthrow.
Yeah, the military was going to swoop in and just arrest them all and.
But it just didn't materialise at all.
Oh yeah, woke up and it was just the same old Groundhog Day right now, innit? Yeah, so that was that would have been funny, that would have been interesting, and I'm not deep. I never went deep into Q. I watched a few things. One mainly shortly before the actual past the inauguration, if that's how you say it, happened, and it was it seemed like a quite logically rational-minded military type guy explaining everything that was going on and how it's all part of the plan and it's all happening perfectly. Which just because he's the president, that doesn't mean that it's not actually that there isn't some plan going on. I just think we're out here in England given a perspective on it, and it looks very shady. We don't really like the look of what's going on,
No.
and. There's got to be intelligent people closer to it that have got an eye on it, that are trying to, if there is something shady going on, which it appears to be, that are, trying to do something about it. So I kind of just leave it to them, and maybe we do wake up one day and something's happened.
Well, I was speaking to someone about this the other day, and I was just like, I worked in a bank however many years ago now, and banks have got systems, and when they try to change a system, there's so many intricate details how that touches other branches and blah blah blah. So changing a system, they might do a year's project to change like this one little section of the bank. So if you're thinking about a system that's been ingrained in American politics for like however many years now,
running the world,
yeah, literally, like the thought of thinking, right, okay, there's a timeline on it and it's going to happen in 4 years, or as it was coming to the end, it's like, oh, there's 1 month and they're going to get this done and that done in that time. I just think just the reality of like big structures and how they work, you can't change something on that sort of timeline. It's tens of years it takes to do something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of gives me hope and faith. Not that it's necessary, whatever's happening, I kind of have faith that it's necessary for it to happen right now, and it's just kind of a collective, a result of the collective masses anyway. But what the one person I was listening to was explaining that when JFK was president, and he was, many people listening to this might have seen that speech he gave. I'm sure you've seen it, where he's talked about the secret societies that are kind of running things behind the scenes that we need to get control of, and then he got assassinated. That was the beginning of this capitalist takeover that kind of was started back then, and that was when they were kind of already deeply in, because they were able to assassinate him in this story, if this is how it's working. And that since then they realized they had to take the people trying to overhaul this and to kind of save humanity from this capitalist takeover, wanted to do it, as you say, in a way that they can't just do it overnight. They can't just do it in 4 years. It takes decades to kind of undo what's been done and to make sure things are done following the protocol, so it is done kind of ethically and morally to their own laws in a way. And that might be what is still happening, and it isn't just as much as there might still be getting evidence on all these people. And one of the big things you hear people talk about, the what's the prison on the island
Guantanamo Bay.
Guantanamo Bay, like they've upped the capacity of that by 2 million or something crazy, or like or something like that, and all the planes flying, you know.
Yeah, I heard about that. Like lots of flight paths going in and out, like way more than usual.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Those are kind of the convincing evidence you hear, and you're like, maybe there is something going on, and maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I think I've really just been focused on my own soul and my own soul's salvation in a sense, and trying to get not too invested and attached to that world, and it makes me be a lot less angry about the whole thing that's going on. But
yeah, that's exactly the same sort of conclusion I came to.
Yeah.
On it. Like I've been reading for ages actually a book called The Subtle Body, and then I listened to a podcast on Paul Chek, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, I think his name is, and he's like an Egyptian architect, and he studies sacred power spots.
Yeah.
Or he studied, and then basically I'm probably going to butcher the whole concept of biogeometry here, but he studied
like that name, biogeometry.
Yeah, it's a cool name, man. It's really cool. And he studied sacred power spots and showed that these places held specific energies, right, and raised frequencies, and showed that like when animals were injured or dying, they'd travel miles and miles to get to the water source, which was closest to these power spots, and sort of talking about like the subtle energy and the energy outside of the five senses that are within these places, which, you know, us as humans can like sort of align ourselves with to optimize our lives. And what he sort of showed through his studies was that the more technology evolved, the more electromagnetic frequencies are in the world, the more people were sort of like knocking themselves off these frequencies that we used to travel miles and miles to get to these places to align ourselves with. So what he's done is he's bringing out products, and I'm actually wearing one now. It's like a necklace, this is called the L90 pendant, which are like supposed to be able to like center your energy to that of a sacred power spot when you're not at a sacred power spot.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I was finding when I was like digging into all of that stuff, like all the conspiracy stuff, that like ultimately it wasn't making me feel good, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And then I started, through reading that book and listening to these podcasts, I was like, actually, I just need to be focusing on like my own sort of subtle energy and like raising that. So I took a big step away from all the conspiracy stuff, and I feel a lot better for it, to be honest.
Yeah. That's. I think my friend Felix coined it once. He said he's conspiracy fasting.
Yeah,
which means he's not looking at conspiracies. And I think there's totally times and places, because just seeing the reality of the world that we actually live in, the true darkness of some of it, is humbling, and it does, you know, quieten you a bit, or make you know reflect a little bit, which we need sometimes. But then at the same time, you can't focus on your world around it. And I think certainly like the law of attraction and recognizing the world around you is a reflection of where you're at. And though you might be able to see these stories online, and you look around in your actual reality and it's not around you, maybe it's not that relevant for you to worry too much about. But it's that in it, because at the same time, if we can help, and there are these child sex traffic things, which seems to be, that's one of the biggest things in my head, that it's like, if that's going on and it's behind the scenes in our country, how can we help that? But
yeah, it's strange, isn't it? It's like there's a line with it that you kind of have to walk, and it's something that I haven't been able to identify, like where on that spectrum I need to sit at the moment, you know what I mean? Because getting into it too much has made me, you know, not feel good about what's going on, and then but then there's a level of awareness, and then, you know, it's where do you draw that line where you know you try and actually do something in the real world. And yeah, it's a question I'm still trying to answer.
Yeah, something to transition. Something that Marcus Rashford. Sorry.
Yeah.
Speaking of people doing things, he did something, didn't he? He fought to get. I don't know too much details about it, to be honest, but he got those £30 home school meals for the children.
Okay, so I haven't heard about this.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I think because people were at home, they weren't able to get the school meals, and I think that there was a big thing on with who's the guy, the health minister or whatever.
Health minister for England.
Yeah, I forget his name. I can picture his face so clearly. Anyway, they said no, we're not going to provide them with money. Then Rashford did this campaign and managed to they got some funding, and then I think either way they agreed to give £30, I think it was per week, towards these home lunches for these school children. And this image appeared of people that actually got these £30 worth of food. They weren't going to give the people £30 cash because they might just spend it on whatever. So they were like, let's just actually give them the food.
Yeah.
And so they got a company got given a contract to provide this food for these people, and it was basically, this was £30 worth of food, and it was just the most dismal picture of food you'll ever see. Yeah. And it was like supposed to hit the like food requirements and stuff like that, and it's like a tin of beans and like a tiny slab of cheese and like a loaf of bread and like 2 potatoes and 2 carrots, and it was like, like this is £30 worth of food, and people were like that looks like about £5 worth of food, you know, maybe £10 worth of food if you're generous.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, this is out on the back of the government refusing to do it, and then finally after, you know, these campaigns and stuff, actually going, okay, we'll do it. And this is what they give them. They give a contract to a company, and I don't know the ins and outs. I would not be surprised if there's ties. The people that got given the contract have ties in with the government. And it's like,
most likely.
But what strikes me as, this is a project the government's got given, right, to help sort these people out with food. There's a budget, and there's evidence of that budget being spent. We know what food costs what, right? Mm-hmm. So when you see that picture and you go, that's what they're giving people 35, like someone's making, where's the money going?
Yeah, the rest of the money.
Where's the rest of the money going? And that's a moment which someone's done, you know, we can potentially you know, there's millions of pounds here, we can keep half the million for profit or whatever, we can buy the rest for food, however they want to do it, which it completely shouldn't even be for profit, or, you know, however. This is a moment when we can see what the evidence of what they're spending, and they've flipping had us.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they've completely sabotaged it. They've took, obviously so much of that money has gone to something else and not to the food, and that's an example where we know where that money's going. What are they doing when we don't know where the money's going? Yeah. You know what I mean? When you don't know how much a vaccine should cost, like us every man don't know what the cost of the test should be. Yeah. But some company that's got given a contract can they can set the price of a test, and no one can argue with the price of that test.
Yeah, I do wonder if they do like what they call it, like, you know, behind the scenes they have conversations, and all these companies will set prices. They'll agree behind the scenes, okay, because otherwise you'd have people undercut it, and obviously that sort of stuff's illegal. Yeah. But you do wonder if it goes on. It probably does.
I saw someone stand up and speaking, this Asian girl, the other day, and it was on someone's, I think Angus shared on his story, and she was saying how someone with all these contracts that are given out at this time, you know, there's so many different things going on, you're 10 times more likely to get a contract if you have a connection with someone in a political party than if you don't. Yeah. And it's like, well, that is absolutely ludicrous. It should be almost like you can't get a contract if you have ties, or understandably there are going to be some ties, but there should be some sort of limitation on that. But anyway, that was just something I saw, and I thought, if that's how much they're having people up when they can even work out how much they're being, you know, bent over, what are they doing when they can't work out how much they're being bent over, and where's all this money going?
It's mad as well, because it's like, what can you do about that, right? You see all the time. Like, I had a conversation with someone the other day, and they said to me, they were just like, the news is so blatantly full of bullshit, but it's like, you see it, and you see these like government schemes or whatever, and that's a prime example, and you go, right, well, it's obvious they're mass buying this probably poor quality food, it's costing them a few quid, they've raised 30 quid per person, where's the rest of the money going? You know, it doesn't take like a terribly intuitive or intelligent person to realize something doesn't add up there. But it's like, when you see that happen, like, what can you actually go out and do to go, you know, what's going on here? And it's just that disconnect between politics and the people, whereas politicians should be right for the people, representatives of the people, but that isn't, in my experience, that isn't the case, right? There's just this massive disconnect.
Well, people know politicians and politics and governments are corrupt, and I think almost every human would accept that. Yeah. But they just don't seem to accept it when it's happening in this scenario. In this, they just think this is for some reason. There's that. Is it cognitive dissonance or whatever, where they disassociate from this scenario and being the time when they probably are capitalizing and being the most corrupt, or, you know, or they've got an opportunity to really capitalize. But
well, I think there's two sort of groups of people, right? There's the people that go, yeah, there's obviously corruption going on and there's something up. And then you've got people where there's this huge level of cognitive dissonance, like you said, who are just like happy with their lot and how the system's
They
working
would
for
still
them.
admit that governments are corrupt, but they just wouldn't call it out in this scenario because of what it would mean for their reality.
Yeah, exactly. Their reality, and they're happy with it, so they're happy to turn a blind eye to stuff.
Don't know
like
they're
that.
happy with it, but they just believe the fear has driven them to accept it. Really.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they decide to question that, it's like all of a sudden this whole like reality paradigm they've built around themselves comes crumbling down.
Yeah.
And it's like if you start questioning that, what else do you start questioning? And
it was Matt
It's a
Hancock.
journey.
That was the name of the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've been so out of the loop with this stuff, not focused on it. His name slipped, but I did see Piers Morgan calling him out the other day, and I saw the clip, and Piers Morgan was saying, you're not going to take it. Don't take it or whatever. And I thought he was saying, don't take your salary or something like that. And I thought that's a bit harsh, but fair enough. Like maybe, people are suffering. Maybe, don't get paid. But he was saying, don't take your pay rise. And it's like,
oh right, yeah.
he was on TV, a pandemic like this. And Piers was kind of a bit harsh, but he was trying to make him say now you won't take your pay rise over all this. And he just wouldn't admit it. And you think, I kind of felt for him, because you're like, he's probably working, in some sense he's working his ass off, but at the same time, the corruption that looks quite clearly going on, he's probably getting paid loads of other money at the same. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it seems like these people
We
who
don't know
get
who's
into
paying,
the like sort of higher positions of power, right, are the people that they can manipulate the most, basically.
Yeah.
But on that point of politicians, I saw a clip the other day actually of a politician in Parliament in the UK who was like arguing for the general population during this time. So when I say like politicians aren't on the whole connected to the people, this guy, to be fair to him, was
he the silver-haired guy?
Yeah.
I forget his name. He's great. Yeah.
He was making a point around that, like, he's heard a lot of politicians and celebrities and stuff calling people COVID idiots and for like going out without a mask on and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, it's all right for us because we're living in big houses with gardens, we've got access to our family, we've got money to buy, ordering food, but there's a huge number of the population that don't have any of those luxuries, and there's a huge number of population suffering with mental health as a result of being locked down.
Yeah.
So you can't just sling these names out like COVID idiots, because it's like, you got to be sensitive to like what other people might be feeling. And
that's really nice of him.
Yeah, really nice of him, man. And it's like, it's good to see someone who's like in touch with like what's going on in the general population.
Just being a balanced middle ground voice kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. I think that's enough politics.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of a few episodes
for the week. Yeah. But the main thing I wanted to talk about today, because it was a big weekend on the weekend for anyone that is a fan of mixed martial arts and the UFC.
Yeah, man.
My favourite fighter. I don't know. I try not to have favourites and I try not to be biased, but there's something when McGregor fights that it's just a special fight week, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. There's a different energy about the week. 100%.
Yeah. So we watched it together. It woke up to snow everywhere.
Yeah.
And we'd arranged to watch it at Josh's. Josh has got BT Sport. Peter, Lewis, everyone was going to come round, and ended up only being me.
Yeah.
Made it. Lewis got boxed in, I think. You get boxed in? Yeah.
Not by the snow.
By the car. My mate's car, man. And then Peter didn't want to drive in the snow. But anyway, me and Josh got to watch it.
Well, that shows how big a McGregor fight week is, actually, because Izzy actually watched the McGregor fight with us, which he would never watch any.
Yeah.
She'd only watch when Diaz fights or McGregor fights.
After checking the results, might I add.
Yeah, she can't help herself.
But you called it. You said, she knows the result, don't look at it.
Yeah.
And we just feel like, no. Yeah, she was like, who do you want to win?
I know, man.
We were like,
You can see it all over her face. That's why you just can't look at her.
You knew she knew the result. But anyway, we watched it Sunday morning, and so we didn't watch it live, but I just kept my phone off. Watched it live, watched co-main, Chandler came through. I was most impressed by the backflip, to be honest. That was quite...
Yeah, man. He said he'd never done one before.
Yeah. He must have done one not on the octagon before. I've not seen him do one on the octagon, but like Gaethje used to do them in the octagon as well, then he stopped. He must have done it on other surface. But what impressed me about the backflip was he didn't set himself. So normally you'd like pop on the thing, you'd check that you're balanced, and then once from being in a balanced position, you can start to fall backwards and flip.
Yeah.
He pops up and flips.
Just straight
like,
off.
Straight off. Like, he looked experienced, I'll be honest. Like, even though he says he's not done it, maybe not off the octagon, but he must be popping up on, I think he does CrossFit or something, or like, he must be popping on boxes.
He looks like a super explosive guy, so he seems like he'd be fast twitch enough just to chuck a backflip.
Yeah, but there's a lot of risk if you're not, like, it's one thing being fast twitch, is knowing where you are in the air to like land it. But no, very impressive. And people said, they thought he was going to bust his knees or something. No, it looked all right to me.
Mate, someone's going to do it sooner or later. I've seen it in rugby, like people doing these like Superman dives over the line.
Yeah.
And people dropping the ball in the air or landing on the ball weird and like breaking a rib. It happens.
Oof.
It's only a matter of time before someone does it in the octagon.
You know, who was it? Johnny Hendricks did it, didn't he? And he did the worm and dislocated his shoulder.
Did he?
Yeah. Johnny Hendricks, not Hendricks. Dan Jack. Is it Hendricks?
No.
What's the name?
Johnny, can't think.
No.
It'll come to you. It'll come to you.
Hendricks.
I've got no idea.
Not Jack Daniels. It's a drink. It's alcohol, isn't it? Johnny Walker.
Oh,
Johnny
right.
Walker.
Yeah, the light heavyweight.
Yeah.
Okay,
He did the
right.
worm and dislocated his shoulder. But then we got to the main event. I watched so much build up. Every interview Conor
watched
did.
a lot as well.
Yeah, we watched so much hype for it. Believed all the hype, to be honest. Conor's beaten Poirier 6 years ago. Everyone's saying it's the motivated McGregor, best Conor ever.
Mm-hmm.
Watching him training clips, and then just fell short, fell flat. Like,
Yeah. It was. I feel like it was a game plan issue for me.
so McGregor lost, for those that don't follow that. In the second round, he got TK knocked out by Poirier. Go on.
So in his previous fights, or at least the ones that stick out in my mind, he kind of takes that karate stance, right? And he stays at range.
Mm-hmm.
And there's clips of him, like the Eddie Alvarez fight, where he's like literally just on the edge of Eddie's range. Eddie will throw a punch and it'll like graze his nose.
Exactly, yeah.
And then he'll pop in and be able to catch him with a combo. And he just seemed like he was more in a boxing stance.
Yeah.
Not keeping that range, and as a result of that, he was getting hammered with the kicks to the calf,
Kicks,
which they're super painful. You've seen quite a lot of UFC fighters over the last year get, since that's become.
So I want to get into the calf kicks, but before we do that, I want to talk about the range that you're saying.
Okay, yeah.
I think because we're going to dissect this I want to
Okay.
I'm ready to go into this.
Okay.
Right? So as you say, versus Alvarez, he was on that like right on the edge of his range, and he was there against Alvarez, and that's his stance. There's two things that bring you into range, right? There's your lower body and your upper body.
Uh-huh.
So his legs can move in and out, and his upper body can lean forward and back.
Yeah.
Against Alvarez, he spent half the fight leaning back and half the fight leaning forward. And what he'd do was he'd lean back, Alvarez would miss, and so Alvarez would, I think, come a bit closer to find the range, but McGregor would be right there. He'd be able to he would give a false sense of range by moving his upper body back.
Yeah.
And then he'd get into real range, and then Alvarez he'd be able to slip the thing and actually connect. Or that was it, sorry. He was pretending to hit Alvarez, but coming short, but it was like a game. Like, he thought he made Alvarez feel safe because he was leaning back. So he'd swing for Alvarez, be leaning back and miss. But Conor had all this space to go, but he gave him a false sense of security. Uh-huh. So I think that was a big part of the thing with Alvarez. But the difference is with Poirier, they're both southpaw. So I think that does change a lot of that game.
Makes it easier to land that kick, right?
The calf kick, which we'll get into.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead.
It's all right. Teeps to the body was something. Against Chad Mendes, he was taking the tank out. Against Alvarez, he does a lot of kicks to the body, that front kick to the body, which he didn't seem to do in this fight. Again, it's southpaw versus southpaw. And one thing with Dustin that makes him quite unique as a southpaw is he's still actually right-handed. A lot of southpaws are left-handed.
Okay.
So he's a right-handed southpaw, which is a unique thing because he's got a power hook.
How does that even work? I thought that was the whole idea. You're southpaw because you're left-handed.
No, it's the way you...
It's the stance.
It's a stance. It's purely stance. So you can still stand the other way, but still be the other handed.
Interesting.
Which is why his right hook is so devastating.
Yeah.
And as Conor said, time in the octagon, I think if you add up both of their times in the octagon, you could probably watch every one of Conor's fights in the UFC within an hour, couldn't you?
Yeah, probably.
25 minutes of Diaz, and then the rest are like 1 and 2 rounders.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
whereas Poirier, how many wars have we watched him in the last 2 years, 2-3 years?
His CV's a joke, man. If you look at who
Holloway,
he's fought,
Gaethje, Alvarez, Khabib.
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone, but pretty much.
He's been absolute don in that division.
Yeah.
But we'll go to the calf kicks then, because this is they say what Benson Henderson kind of started that, brought them about.
Mm-hmm.
What fighting is, when I watch it as an outsider who doesn't fight, so this is a fanboy's opinion, it's you're trying to find the person's weakest link that you can attack with the least risk to yourself, right? You know, when you're playing Sonic when you're younger, and to beat Dr. Eggman Robotnik, what you got to do? You got to jump on his head, right?
Okay, no, I haven't played it, but
okay.
Go on.
You jump on his head and you find the weak spot. And as the levels get harder, when you're playing Bowser, in Mario or whatever, there's a weak spot on the bad guy that you have to hit.
Yeah.
And the other parts of the bad guy are spiky or something, and they're going to hurt you if you hit them.
Mm-hmm.
So what's come about from Benson Henderson and people developing it, like Volkanovski's incredibly good at it, and that's kind of how he got there. Adesanya did it against Costa, right? That calf kick.
Mm-hmm.
And at this top level, what part of your body is sticking out the most when you're fighting in your stance is your front leg, right? Your hands out there, they're pouring the hand. Maybe you could smash someone's hand in, but the leg is sticking out. Now they used to do the thigh kicks, but then you can check it with your knee.
Mm-hmm.
The calf kick, you can't check it the same way at all.
You can check it, right, but it's way less effective.
Way less effective, and because it's out there and you can hit the calf from a distance. To kick someone's thigh, you have to be in another 6 inches, 8 inches to get the thigh. Whereas with the calf, you can be further out of range. So you're doing a lot less risk to yourself to be hurt while being able to damage someone. So if someone's got a weak link there, they don't know how to check it, they don't know how to avoid it. That is the weakness. That is why I see it's taken over, because it's the most vulnerable spot that's sticking out that people can hit for the least risk. To themselves. Conor started catching it, didn't he? And I thought Conor's figured out a way to make them pay for the calf kick, because that's how the sport evolves. Is someone creates something like jiu-jitsu comes in, and until someone figures out how to make someone pay for trying to do that, there's no growth in it. So I feel like we're at a point now with the calf kick where a lot of the champions are doing it. All it takes is a heavyweight kind of to go in and monopolize that as well. Like, I think to take Stipe out, he's a boxer style, right?
Yeah.
So Conor was catching it. He had Poirier's leg up like that.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything with it. Didn't want to sweep him because he doesn't want to take it to the ground.
Yeah.
Didn't make him like crack him. Even against Cerrone, he did an incredible head kick, didn't he? Like stunned him with a head kick.
Yeah.
He just was not kicking, and that's what you were saying. He's looked a bit flat on his feet, and he's much more of a boxing stance than karate stance.
Yeah.
And southpaw versus southpaw meant that he was suddenly susceptible to calf kicks, because if he's fighting an orthodox fighter, he's not susceptible to the calf kicks because it's coming to the other side of the body. It's not coming inside like it was then. So it did look like he'd really favoured his boxing. He'd knocked him out at 145, like he knocked everyone out at 145, but he's only had 2 fights at 155 against Khabib, which he lost, Alvarez, who he managed to sparko out, but he used a lot more kicking and found range a lot. He was a lot more intelligent with how he found the range with Alvarez. And then with Poirier, he didn't have the same options, I don't feel, to find the range. And he just looked like he favoured his boxing so much.
Do you think his left hand's going to be as devastating at 155?
So that's the question with Poirier's chin and war toughness.
Do you think but those bigger guys, because obviously he fought Diaz at 170 and he couldn't he dropped Diaz, didn't he, with the left hand, but he didn't knock him out. And I just wonder whether you go up, you've got someone that's got a bit bigger of a frame, whether that left hand's going to do the same damage in that division generally.
That's what I was saying. He's only had 2 fights there, so he doesn't really know. So maybe it's his learning curve, the way he learnt with Diaz. He did look like he landed some shots, but he's also, because he's trying to prove the point, everyone says he's not got cardio, which I don't agree with, but it looked like he's been doing a lot of cardio, a lot of rowing. Yeah. So they're talking about how his statistics on his HRV's going up.
Yeah,
great.
CO2 tolerance, all that stuff.
But he might have sacrificed some upper body power. You saw the fight Aldo versus Marlon Vera, right? I thought that was a really interesting fight, because Lewis was saying Vera started running, right? And he was running like 15 miles. Remember that? He was running 10 miles, Marlon Vera. He's always been into running. And Aldo, do you think Aldo runs 10 miles? I don't think Aldo runs.
Probably not.
And you look at the power of Aldo's kicks versus the power. There's a difference between the kind of endurance kind of athlete,
Yeah.
and that snapping fighter.
Yeah.
And Conor might be trying to prove this cardio point. Yeah, I've got 5 rounds in me, no problem, and lost a bit of zip as well.
Interesting point. I didn't think of that.
Potentially, maybe not.
Yeah.
But he looks less of the like hungry tiger, and more like, you know, trying to outlast someone, and then he just looked a bit fragile, didn't he?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know whether he potentially has it in his head somewhere in the back, even if it's like subconscious, you know, if it goes into 3, 4, 5 rounds. You know what a lot of people say about him? If you get through the first 2 rounds,
Yeah.
then the fight goes in your favor. I don't know whether maybe he has that in the back of his own mind.
Yeah.
Because for the first time in what I can remember as well, he was missing. He was throwing big shots and missing, and normally he lands like, you know, his hit rate.
He wasn't
high.
setting them up, and he wasn't fainting, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was just going for those big sort of like uppercut shots.
Yeah, that looping. And getting caught, getting check hooked.
Yeah.
Poirier was on that check hook.
It'd be interesting to see so like when he was catching those calf kicks, that's like kind of Thai boxing technique, right? You see it a lot of times in Thai boxing matches where someone
And they're on their back leg, right? So that they're not as susceptible on that front leg.
The front leg in the Thai boxing, it's like it's always bouncing, so it's like they're ready at all times to pull their leg up and check the kick. But because it's more of a kick dominated sport, being in that stance kind of it is like opposite almost to like not opposite, but it's like it takes you out of that boxing stance. So you're like leg dominant.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting what someone like Liam Badco, for example, the UK Muay Thai world champion guy, what he would say about that, like whether he'd have some idea of how you could combat that calf kick.
How can you make someone pay for that? Yeah.
Because you see him, he'll catch kicks and he'll do clever little tricks where he can sweep people or
That's what I
land
thought,
big
yeah.
hits or elbows off catching someone's kick.
Yeah.
So there are ways to do it.
You've got to make someone pay for that. Otherwise, that's taken over the sport right now.
Because I think even with, I know you said you didn't want to go to the deck, but if you caught someone's leg and you swept them,
It looked like he could have swept Poirier easy, but then
And
he wouldn't have done...
well, he wouldn't have done any damage,
Yeah.
but they would have dropped to the deck. But then, say Poirier tried to kick him again, he caught it and he swept him.
Yeah.
Would he keep trying it if every time he did it, he just got caught and swept?
Yeah, well, just if it's like Khabib, you're gonna start not do it. But if you're just getting swept to the floor, and
Yeah.
Poirier's jiu-jitsu's good. Yeah, but that's one way to make them pay. But you want to like, how can you build on that? Like you said, it'd be interesting to see what that guy would say.
Dan Hardy made a very similar point to you when I was watching his sort of like post-fight preview, post-fight show the other day, where he said that's how MMA evolves, right? Something will spring up like a new style of kick or whatever, and then everyone will be thinking about how can we combat that, because it won't just be Conor going away thinking about it'll be every MMA fighter that watched that fight will be trying to come up with a way of combating.
Did he say that as well? Yeah,
okay, he said it.
Sick, yeah.
And then it'll be whoever comes up with, right, okay, you know, that you'll see a bunch of different people try a bunch of different things. Eventually someone will find something that works, and that'll become prevalent in the game. You know, at the same time, some other form of attack will spring up, which will be the new problem to solve.
Yeah, that's it. And this is that one where someone's found that weak link in the MMA armor for people that fight a certain way anyway. And it's curious, but yeah, motivated McGregor is not as same as shit stirring McGregor.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have said that after the thing. They're like, does he need to be that guy to win the match?
I think that guy's gone. I don't think he can. I think having children and growing up has changed him. I think
it would be interesting. I was watching the interview with Gagey, with Brett Okamoto on BT Sport, and I was thinking,
ESPN.
would he, on ESPN? Sorry, yeah, you're right. Would he shit talk against Gagey? Because I feel like Gagey's one of those guys where Conor could get in his head.
Yeah.
So is it a tactical thing where he's thinking, oh well, there's no fans at the moment. I've got this like respect with Poirier, whatever, because the charity match, and he tactically chose not to do it this time.
I think he's.
You think it's done?
Yeah, well, I just don't think it was. I think with Poirier it didn't feel right, but with Gaethje it might feel right.
Yeah,
I don't think it's tactical as it is just organic. But you're right. I think with Gaethje, he might shit talk. But I also think Gaethje wouldn't be worried because Gaethje's leg kicks are like...
Yeah, savage.
He would be quite... I don't think
But he's not south. Is Gaethje southpaw?
No, which is a fair point.
It would be interesting to watch. But in your opinion, what's the next matchups?
Yeah. Truthfully, if I had to put money on it, and I'm totally down for it, it's the rematch. It's Conor Poirier for the belt.
Yeah.
And Lewis was saying they won't do that, and he's like, they can't give a belt off a loss, which say it's the UFC. They can do, right?
Yeah.
They've did it with Aldo, and they've done it with other people.
I agree with Lewis to an extent. Like, I don't think it's the right thing to do.
It doesn't seem right.
If they, I wouldn't be surprised if they go and do it.
What Cormier said, are we doing it for sport or are we doing it for show? I think that's how he said it, something like that.
Yeah.
Because if you do it for sport, it probably should be Oliveira.
Yeah.
Which I agree with everyone that says that, because he's on a fight win streak, like 7-fight win streak or something. Probably the most proven in that division. Poirier could have the belt right now. Oliveira for the title. But if you're doing it for show, I could picture Poirier taking that fight. He's just beaten Conor. They're 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
Get the fight out of the way with, then he doesn't have to do it in the future or think about it again in the future. He's just had a training camp and just beat the guys. In every sense, it feels like if he's going to do the rematch with Conor, he may as well just do it now and get it done with.
Yeah.
Conor obviously brings in enough money that the UFC might do that, put that for a belt.
Mm-hmm.
Conor's proven himself in rematches so far. I mean, it's one rematch with Diaz, but so many people counted him out to do it at the same weight. That, for me, the fact that he did the rematch with Diaz at the same weight at 170, which was probably the big part of the problem in the first place, in a sense, for me, that gives him the golden ticket to say, let me have another rematch with Poirier. And how many, not one person watched that that's a hardcore fan that doesn't think Conor will approach it better. Even if they think he'll still lose, there will be a very different approach second fight, I think.
It gives the UFC a narrative to work with, the Diaz rematch before.
Yeah.
Say they don't do that.
Yeah, okay.
What's the other option in your mind?
Well, there's a tournament going on, isn't there?
Yeah.
And so you could just do Diaz-Conor then.
Yeah.
But they say, as everyone says, they could do that in 5 years' time. They don't need to rush that trilogy, right? But you probably do Diaz-Conor, because then if Diaz wins, he's in the title picture then.
What about Conor-Tony? I think
that would be great. Yeah. Conor-Tony would be
because they might think, right, we need to build Conor back up.
Yeah.
Tony seems like he might be on the decline. We'll give Tony and Conor match. It'll gain a load of interest. They'll probably be shit talking again.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd watch that.
It'd be a cool
give
one.
Oliveira Poirier.
Yeah.
Then Chandler Gaethje, right?
Yeah.
I think that's, even though Gaethje lost to Khabib and Chandler just won, I still think they're at equals right now.
Yeah, that could work.
Who else have you got? The RDA's kind of come back.
Then Hooker, obviously, but he just didn't. He didn't look right to me, man. Has he come out and said anything since the fight?
He hasn't. I watched an interview with Eugene Behrman, his coach, to see if he said anything.
And he didn't.
No, didn't say anything. Just said he's gutted with the loss. Gutted that it happened so quickly, and now he's got like 6 weeks because he's got 6 weeks in
Abu Dhabi before he can fly back.
Before he can fly back, because New Zealand you have to book in your return. When you return, you've got to quarantine for 2 weeks, and you have to book in your return. So anyone that's traveling is like a 4-week wait before you can even do your quarantine. So he's gone to Abu Dhabi for 2 weeks, lost in one round, and then got to wait 6 weeks to see his family. He's just got a daughter, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think it's 6 weeks to Abu Dhabi, and then he's got a quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel.
I think it's 4 weeks or 2 weeks, but either way, it's
a long time.
Ludicrous. But it's interesting. It's so funny when you're like just a bit more versed on the fakeness of capitalism, and like when I've been to Dubai and you're like, this place shouldn't exist, it's just built in the desert, and the amount of, even Vegas, built in the desert, like the amount of energy expended to get water there and to get electricity to that region is absolutely insane, and quite a plight of humanity, to be honest, but alas, it exists. And I remember Bruce Buffer in the Embedded was saying to Poirier, you're going to a 5-star jail, basically.
Yeah.
As much as they want to say it's amazing, it's incredible, it's built for it, sure, but especially with the quarantine, with everything going off, you see Embedded and you see Conor turning up shirtless with a mask on, and then you see about 20 people in hazmat suits welcoming him. It's like, it does not look like a place you want to go to.
The hazmat suit stuff is just quite comedy, isn't it? How like all the cleaners were walking around the hotel in full like suit and mask,
and they're just so fake happy. I've seen them cheering for like Poirier afterwards, and it's like, you were going to cheer for whoever, like.
Yeah.
You cheer for the winner, which is kind of fake. Did you? This is a good subject actually. Did you see the Italian guy that beat Joaquin Buckley the other day? You know, Joaquin Buckley got knockout of the year, and then he's on that, kind of bit of a streak. Well, he's 2 fights, 2 good knockouts. They gave him this Italian guy who'd lost 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And the Italian guy beat him, I think, first round or second round, knocked him out. And then on the mic, he said, "I don't like how you don't interview the losers after fights to like the media and everything." And people thought he meant in the octagon, because if someone's knocked out, you don't really want to interview the guy that's knocked out. There's been that whole thing with Joe Rogan interviewing someone, and Cormier, I think he interviewed.
It makes sense, I think.
So, but he didn't mean, he meant like after, post-fight press conference, or when people are want people to go on their MMA podcasts or shows.
Yeah.
They only ring the winners all the time. They never speak to the losers. And I mean, he just lost 3 in a row, so it's kind of fresh in his mind. But then he did a post-fight press conference, and he sat down and he said it was a 40-second press conference that got quite a lot of views, and he was just like, "I don't like how you only interview the winner." And sometimes I watch fights and I want to hear what the loser, like Hooker.
Yeah, I'd love to know what Hooker
I want to
has
know.
to say.
Yeah, I'd love to, and it's, so I do feel for those people when they lose. Like when you watch any football or anything, they always interview the losing manager after, and he gets to say his piece, and it's like. I watch chess. I follow chess now, and I love hearing, Carlsen, who's the world champion, has been on the worst streak he's ever really been on since he's been kind of world champion. And watching interviews with him, seeing how he's feeling about it, and it is always interesting to hear from their perspective. And this guy just took a stand and said, And then I watched an interview with him recently. He's come out and given an interview and talked more about it. But I just thought that is nice that there are people within this that have that are trying to think more ethically, because it's such a quite a fate. It's gladiator industry mixed with capitalism.
It's so fickle, man. Like, you see what we were talking about earlier, weren't we? Like Gagey having lost to Khabib. Yeah. If you think about Gagey post the Tony fight, everyone thought he was like, best, potentially best in the world. He's got the best opportunity to beat Khabib. He was like really in the spotlight. Yeah. Then he's lost to Khabib, and then he's just on training camp or doing whatever he's doing, just carrying on with his life. And in that interim, Oliveira's had an impressive win. Connor's fought, Poirier's fought, Chandler and Hooker, and it's like he's disappeared. If it wasn't for that Brett Okamoto interview
recently,
it's like he would have disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes they want that, But then I think Uriah Hall was saying he really supported that guy, because Uriah Hall's had some rough losses and probably wanted to speak his piece. But I don't know. We're not really, when it's an industry of guys trying to make each other unconscious and injured. Maybe we're not really. It's not really our job to try and put them to rights and moral issues, if that's the industry. But there's something in MMA that just absolutely fascinates me, and it might be some deep addiction thing that I have. I don't know what it is, and I would love not to be intrigued by it, but it really intrigues me.
Yeah, I'm hooked on it, man. Like that feeling of the McGregor week and
exactly
like the morning of the fight.
It's
about as exciting as it gets.
It felt better than Christmas, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I was more excited than Christmas.
100%, man. 100%.
Yeah.
Christmas is just like, it's cool, nice day with the family and stuff,
but
like
children,
genuine excitement.
Yeah.
It's like the MMA, it's just, it only comparable for me for like when like Wales are sort of getting into the higher levels of the World Cup.
Yeah. It's what it is. It's questions and answers. And MMA, it's just the way the questions get answered. It's just so exciting, isn't it? It's like it's such a fascinating thing. Well, on that note, as much as I'd want to give it up, but I'm still addicted to it. The upcoming fights.
Yeah.
We've got some good title fights coming up. I've wrote them down here. I've got a nice list.
Go on.
Title fight in February coming up. February 13th, 2 weeks. Usman versus Burns. Well, let's go. Let's both guess winners.
Burns.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, on the Conor, I really try not to be biased, and I try not to have favourites. But when Conor fights, there's something in the magic of that I wanted him to win. Just for the legacy. I feel like it's legacy moments. Yeah. And the more it takes shine from that. But it is what it is. With everyone else, I don't really have favourites. But I kind of want Burns to win that as well.
Yeah, that's how I always just go with whoever I want to win. You want to basically.
Win. Yeah, that's cool.
It's just so Kamaru's had some like amazing fights, obviously, but
they said they've done 200 rounds of sparring together.
Oh, really?
Okay, there's an interview with Usman, and Okamoto asked him this question, and it's one of the best questions I feel like I've ever seen a reporter ask someone. And he goes, "I think you know what I mean when I say this. Do you and Burns know who's going to win?"
Yeah.
Because you've fought 200 rounds together.
Yeah.
And I bet that completely makes sense that they might just know. Like,
Yeah.
you know if someone's better than you, and you just might that. Even if on the night you show up differently, I don't know. Like,
Well, you got to think, right? If someone's been beating you up in training for like months and months and months, you're going into there and you're going, even if, you know, the whole fighter speak where you're like, you externalize this like super confidence.
Yeah.
It's got to be a nagging voice in the back of your head going, I've lost a lot of rounds to sparring to this guy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to pull up something magic on the night to do it.
Yeah. So it's hard to doubt Usman, but if anyone's got a style to beat him, I think it's Burns. So I'll go Burns as well. So that's next month. March 6th. We've got a triple, was it UFC 259, I think? Triple title fight card. You've got Nunes versus Megan Anderson.
Nunes.
Yeah. Yan versus Sterling. Petr Yan versus Sterling.
Yan.
I'm going to go Yan. I'm going to go Sterling. Yan beat Aldo, but he wasn't like a demolition. So yeah, but I think that could be close. Then we've got another Jan Blachowicz versus Izzy in the main event.
I don't know, man. I really like Izzy. I think he's got some. I don't know. He's like another level, mate. He's like watching a computer game.
Light heavyweight was a bit scarce. Yan came in, did well, did his bits, but I think Izzy's.
I like Yan though. The whole like embedded last time and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought he's quite a cool character.
I like him.
Yeah,
he got me into the. You listened to Godfather theme song on Embedded, and I like that song from that. Yeah, I'll pick Izzy though. I think Izzy's the best martial artist in the UFC right now.
Yeah,
after Conor, if Conor could have impressed me, and I could have said they're joint 1 and 2 or whatever first. But after his loss to Poirier, Izzy's number 1 right now. I think Conor needs to go do like a camp with City Kickboxing, or I feel like Max Holloway's camp. Something. And I don't think Conor would ever do it.
No, I don't think so either.
But because we could have talked so much on the Poirier thing, just to go back to it, man. Poirier is in a gym with dogs. He's training with Masvidal, who's a weight up.
Yeah.
Grinding, you know, they're wrestling. I seen Poirier conditioning program was all like mountain climbers and, you know, 5 rounds of 5 lots of 1 minute. So you do like 1 minute of mountain climbers, 1 minute of V-sits, you know, 5 lots of something, then 5 rounds of that. Compared to Conor, who's probably rowing 5K on I don't know what Conor's doing. And hindsight's 2020, so it's easy for me to say it. But it looked like Poirier's training to be a dog. And he's training with other absolute dogs. Do you know what I mean? In that gym where he's at with Mike Brown and them. Whereas I just don't think Conor's putting himself through the same. He might have sparring partners and go through, and, you know, he can grind. But compared to like being in a gym with absolute monsters, I think Poirier was just so much more comfortable in there.
Well, I thought that on the lead up to the fight, right? Because a lot of people were saying this narrative of, well, Poirier's part of a team and Conor's like got his whole team built around him, so everyone's focusing on him.
But you can believe either one until the fight happens, can't you?
Well, you can believe either one, but like people weren't even, because I just speaking from my experience playing sport, right? You never push yourself as hard as when you're training with teammates that are pushing you.
Yeah,
and like there might be the odd session where you get yourself in a mental state where you're like, right, and you really go for it on your own. But generally, like, to get yourself training at that level, you need people around you. Like, someone will turn up and they'll push the pace that day, and then you're staying with them. And then 1 week it'll be your turn to push the pace whenever you're feeling good. And it's like, it's just like, you know, your brain chemistry. Like, someone might get up, they might have a wicked day, and the next day they're like, right, I'm on it, we're training today. And then they raise the rest of the people in the room. And I think that's one of the cool things about being part of a team like that. And I didn't hear any reporters leading up to the fight going, oh, Poirier's at an advantage because he's training as part of a team. Which I think when you speak to an athlete, they take the complete opposite perspective. So it'd be interesting to see. Conor could probably do with you know, mixing it up a little bit, but like you said, I don't think he would.
Hindsight's 2020 and that. But yeah, if he went, I think him and Izzy would get on well. Like, they're both really like. I think he could learn a lot from City Kickboxing. I think they've got a lot of tactics and feints that Conor would pick up so quickly. But anyway. Stipe versus Ngannou, March 27th.
Oof, mate, Ngannou.
Yeah, I'd be happy to see Ngannou have the belt round.
I feel like it's his time. Like he's been chipping away, hasn't he, and learning his craft. We'll
see. Stipe might just have his number, and Ngannou might just have that psychology. But then you never know. Rematches are quite interesting.
See those Stipe body shots, mate. That's one of the hardest fights. When Stipe and Cormier fought, and he was just catching him with body shot after body shot, I was like flinching everyone.
If he keeps it on the feet and doesn't wrestle Ngannou, that'd be so interesting to see. So the final one on that same card, actually, as Stipe Ngannou, this is still March. Featherweight, Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega.
I don't know. I really like Volkanovski.
If Ortega won, then you can just do Max Ortega straight away. But it's so I think that might be the easiest pick on. No, apart from Nunes, I think the Volkanovski takes that.
Do you think that? So if Volkanovski wins, they just do a rematch with Max?
Yeah.
What's the date of that fight?
March 27th.
So it's not if Max wouldn't have to fight again, he could just wait all the way through
To July or something.
Yeah, fair. He's a veteran, obviously, so he probably
everyone knows Max deserved. Max got so much love, didn't he?
He looked so impressive.
Yeah,
really impressive.
Yeah, that was an incredible performance.
So there's no John Jones matchup yet.
No, I think they're waiting for Ngannou Stipe, and
they'll give him the title shot with the heavyweight. Wow.
Yeah, but that's it. Those are the title fights coming up. So it's an exciting 2 months coming up, basically.
Yeah, and they'll probably chuck the lightweight title in at the end of that run, probably somewhere. Do you reckon?
Yeah, they should, eh?
Yeah.
Maybe April they could do it. If it's still, we'll see.
Think it'll be a good start to the year.
Yeah, sick. Well, that's it. That was the main subject we want to talk about. Let's hit some UFC, talk about McGregor.
Cool.
I wanted to share a book I'm reading. If anyone wants a book recommendation, just because some people like book recommendations. The World Unseen. Really enjoy. This is absolutely blown my mind. I wouldn't just bring it on any old book that I'm reading, but this is basically a guy, Robert Benson, died in 1950s, went to the spirit world and is channeled back his kind of experience of the spirit world. It goes into music, it goes into flowers, the soil there, into the darker realms, the higher realms. I just read a chapter on recreation, and I was like, what kind of sports? Does sports still exist in the spirit world?
Do they?
Kind of different. They don't actually do as much sport.
Okay.
They race boats because they can control boats with their intention. So they race them because your power of focus is the kind of speed you can get. That was just one thing.
So is this a guy that's had an NDE and he's come back and now he can channel, or he's someone that's died and he's being channeled? He's
died and he's channeling back through, and this Anthony guy is channeling him through.
Interesting.
And I've read a few different books, and these all kind of line up with each other. So I know you could be like, yeah, it could be nonsense, whatever. It could, but it feels, I don't know, you can say a lot of things feel certain ways. It just is so, it puts things into perspective, and it really resonates a lot of what it's saying. And it's like, the more I recognize the afterlife that's to come, and that the kind of position you get your soul to on earth kind of builds that. In the Bible, it says, he's building a mansion in heaven for you. But in the Bible, it's also like you have to, or in Christianity, you have to believe. If you can be an evil person your whole life, and then the moment you're going to die, say, "Oh, I believe in God," and then, not to simplify it, but then you can go to heaven, basically. But it's not how it is. It's like, how are your actions? How do you treat other humans? And that determines kind of what realm you get to. And then when you get to those realms, you can grow within those realms. But this is just one guy who was Christian when he was on earth, but he's not Christian now. He's seen the spirit world. He's like, no, Christianity wasn't right. But he still lived and of service to others. And because of that, he's in a nice realm in the spirit world. And he's visited the darker realms and seen why they're there and why they're there. And they can help them. If those people have 1 inch of spiritual inclination, they can then grow out of those realms to the nicer realms. And it talked about the buildings of art, and how musicians that made musical pieces. The chapter on music's amazing. How music has a visual as well as audio, so it creates colors, and the more harmonious the song, the kind of greater quantity the colors will grow in. As a song builds, the size of this color coming off the orchestra playing or whatever will grow.
Yeah.
And that can be healing as well. And so artists that have made songs have gone to the afterlife and then tweaked them slightly, because they're able to tune into what's harmonious and what's more discord.
Interesting.
And even artists that have done paintings and stuff have changed. There's galleries there in the spirit world where artists have changed the work as they've come, because they say all stuff is created in the spirit world and then we channel it through to earth. And because of our own discord or our own limited condition, we channel stuff through at slight off kilter.
Yeah.
And so when they get to the spirit world and they grow a bit spiritually, they can then redo the work, but in the way it was meant to be done before they channeled it through their own filters, which limited it, right?
Yeah.
So I just think it's so interesting. So I just, for anyone that's like 5-10% that are down for a book recommendation, The World Unseen is on Amazon. I'm really enjoying that.
It's fascinating, man. I love stuff like that. We listened to a book called Many Lives, Many Masters before.
Yeah.
All about like past. It just reminded me it's not the same thing, but it was like people going to like have past life regressions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it sounded similar to. It just reminded me of that when you were speaking of it.
Yeah.
Super
Anyway, I just wanted. I'm really just every day I'm reading bit in the morning, bit, and the chapters are quite short as well. And it's basically 3 books put into one. So. And I've bought the old versions. Anyway, yeah. So where can people find you?
So Instagram, APE_nutrition. My website is apenutrition.co.uk. We've got keto protein bars, or just like raw, like the fat packs are like more like raw chocolate bars, basically. We got CBD oils, lion's mane, and cordyceps mushrooms, and MCT oil. And some t-shirts, and we've got a real new exciting product announcement. So I've got grass-fed and organic freeze-dried heart, liver and kidney capsules coming out in the next couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about, from a UK farm.
That's big, yeah.
And it's just like nature's multivitamin, and to have it in that like raw form, because a lot of people struggle to eat organ meats, and if you look at our ancestors, that was like the first thing they would eat when they'd sort of capture and hunt an animal, because it's so nutrient dense. So bringing that to people in a form which is super easy to digest, and you can just take 5 caps every day and get your like a huge influx of nutrients into your body. I'm really happy about it. I can't wait.
Yeah, we can talk about that in more depth on another.
Yeah, we can do it another time when it's out.
Yeah, cool. And for me, weartherope.co.uk, we sell the ropes. Help with your biomechanics. Put a poll out or question out recently. What does it help people with? Most people, a lot of the feedback is to do with mindfulness, meditation, get into a flow state. But then a lot of people message me about injuries, that it's helped them to heal from joint issues. So it's a beautiful tool. Weartherope.co.uk. There's more information on there. I've just about finished editing a course for people who want to coach the rope. So people who already got a practice going and they would like to teach it to others. That's nearly done. I'm going to launch that officially within the next month, I think. But if you're a coach and you listen to this show, drop me a DM on Instagram from Wear the Rope or Human Timothy, and I will get you an early version at half price if you want, because I want people who are really dedicated, that are on it from early. I want to support that. So if you're a coach and you listen to this show, I appreciate that you're listening. And if you want to go deeper and you want to be able to teach that, just drop me a DM. If you're up for it, I'll sort you a half price code, and I'll get you the course like a month or a few weeks before it actually gets released publicly. So then I can get some feedback and we can chat about it, and hopefully it can help you there. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. At Human Timothy, on Instagram, at Wear the Rope. Discount code, all caps lock, rediscover, for 10% off the ropes. I dropped the price recently of all ropes. Just got pulsers back in stock. For those that follow WEC Method, I sell the pulsers. I've been training a bit, the WEC Method stuff, but I think we'll have another episode. I want to come to a session at yours. You've got the sandbag set up. Mm-hmm. You've got some other announcement with some equipment and stuff. Yeah. So we'll do this again.
We'll do a training session.
Hopefully it won't be as long in the future. Yeah, maybe we'll film some training.
I think people want to hear about that home training. Oh, you just reminded me, I've got a discount code for podcast listeners, Rediscovering Human. Put it in the show notes.
Yeah, wicked. Thank you guys so much for listening and hearing us talk about men fighting
in a cage.
It's an interesting subject, but we appreciate you listening, and God bless you all.
Thank you.